Good evening and welcome to Spotlight On right here on S24 television. Today we turn to Borno State, a place often spoken about through the language of conflict, displacement and humanitarian crisis. But beyond the headlines, there is another struggle. A girl missing school because of menstruation, a woman denied voice in decisions that shapes her life, a child whose health depends on information reaching the last mile, and a survivor needing protection, not stigma. A community trying to heal why culture, poverty, and insecurity collide. Our guest today is Aisha Takabu, founder and executive director of Zekawis, Zenith of the Girl Child and Women Initiative Support. Zekawis 2025 work reached 110,709 people directly, over 4.5 million indirectly, established 24 menstrual hygiene clubs, enrolled 1,210 schoolgirls, reached 80,000 plus children through child health interventions, engaged 38 religious and traditional leaders, trained 30 healthcare and humanitarian workers, mobilized 107 volunteers, and managed over 280 million naira in program funds. So today, the question is not whether women and girls need support. The question is, why are their most basic rights still treated like charity? Aisha, too, welcome to S24 Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Halima.
So let's begin with who you are before Zekawis, because I know you started from somewhere and you've always liked to tell your story, and this is where storytelling starts again today. So who were you before Zekawis?
Okay, thank you so much, and I like the fact that you're asking who I am before Zekawis, because a lot of people out here only knew the Aisha and the Zekawis brand that she puts forward. Once again, like you already introduced, my name is Aisha Tukabu, and of course before Zekawis, I was just a young activist who was displaced from a community called Dambua. Of course, people like to put Dambua in the put of ahead of my name. Aisha Tukabu, and I came from Dambua local government of Borno State. That was where I was born and raised. And then, of course, I did my primary school in Dambua, secondary school in Damatru, and going back to complete in Dambua. And then I did my university at the prestigious University of Maiduguri. I graduated in the Department of Mass Communication. And before that, of course, I was an activist with Action Aid Nigeria, a Girls Get Equal champion with Plan International, a Follow the Money champion with Connected Development. So before Zekawis, I started my career back then in 2015 with Save the Children International as community volunteer. I do mother-to-mother support group, gathering women to teach them nutritional practices, good nutrition practices, and then also trying to empower them to address their critical nutritional needs based on the locally available food in their environment, meeting the 4-star diet that is recommended for both pregnant and lactating women. So that was back then in 2015. That's how I started my career. Later on, I joined Plan International as IOCF assistant, and in Plan International, I was working in the DPO. Then the security situation in Borno State is not as better as today. Yeah, of course, Borno is still under a security threat, but you cannot compare it to back then in 2015, 16, 17. So in 2017, I joined Plan International as infant and young child feeding assistant, still on the IYCA program. So although it was still a nutrition program, it will interest you to know that the interest shifted while I was in MAPA, and when people address me as a protection personnel, I say, yes, I accidentally switched to protection, just like a it's just like a play, because I was there as nutrition person in the field, but then circumstances happen. Most of the case workers in Plan International then that are working in the field were either from Benue or I think Jos. Most of my colleagues that I work with that are working in the nutrition, in the protection department, doesn't even understand Hausa, talk less of Kanuri. And then these are people that in Mafa, even as someone that is rooted from Borno State, there are people that I find it very difficult to communicate with because they speak one local language called Gamargu. So sometimes I use body language to interact with those people. I speak Kanuri even if they don't understand Kanuri. To some certain extent, Kanuri will be a far way better for them than Hausa or a language English that is being spoken in Benue or Jos. So because of that, anytime my colleague in the protection department are doing case management, I would be involved in the processes. So for me, I learned my case management and protection work on the job. It's not as if I'm being trained to become a protection person from the beginning. So when I began to listen to some of these stories coming from caring for child survivors of sexual violence to women and girls that are undergoing domestic violence and so many traumatic stories of women in conflict-affected setting, I didn't pick interest in protection, and that's how I naturally switched to protection without nutrition. Anybody, yes, from nutrition to protection person. So that was in 2017. And then I was in Plan International and in that MAFA till December 2018. But before then, I saw some challenges happening in the community. Parents don't want to send their daughters to school. And then anytime the education department also like to utilize me as someone that is rooted from the state, as someone that experienced the displacement myself and everything. So anytime I spoke to the parents of these women, of these children that don't want to send their daughters to school in the IDP camps, they listen to me because I speak to them in their own language. They are not seeing me as an outsider. Yes, I used to tell them
You've lived it as well.
Of course. So I often tell them that the only reason why I don't stay in IDP camp like you people is because I went to school. And then you see, I come here educating you. I am sure that you also as parents be happy if tomorrow your daughters step into my foot and then do the same to other displaced people. We're not praying for continuous displacement, but I want to see that a child in 2017 is already 9 years old, right? So a child in 2018 is already 8 years old. So the vision was that for me to be able to convince these parents to take their children
to school.
So that was basically me before Zekawis. But one of the key things that triggered me to start Zekawis is the fact that as just an officer or an assistant, there are limitations to the level of decision, and then I can be able to influence. Some of these decisions, not even the humanitarian coordinators that are heading the field office can be able to make certain decisions for an organization. So I find it very difficult, and the kind of gaps that exist between I and these people, I can't be able to influence them to see things from my perspective. So that was what that was what basically made me to start thinking of coming up with an initiative. So for Zekawis, I have been doing this kind of engagement beyond my terms of contract, beyond my terms of reference that I was offered by the INGOs that I work with, both in Plan International and in Save the Children. I go extra mile to engage these people because I have lived in their experience. And then most of the people, often in Mafa till today, I recently visited Mafa with my colleagues seated here, and then when we visit there, most of the young people in the community, I know them back then in 2017-18, and because Aisha IDP was the name that I gave myself, because I always fight with my colleagues when I see them talking to the IDPs in a manner that is not dignified. I used to tell them that these people are doing better before this conflict. Some of these people, some of these women, if you ask them to go to Maiduguri, they will not go because they are doing better in their communities. So they are displaced doesn't mean that they don't have a life to live. You don't just talk to them anyhow. So my colleagues that I work with, both in Plan and then other partners that are in the field, tag me Aisha IDP, and I'm sure till today there are people that if I will meet them on the street, whether it could be in the street of New York or it could be in Lagos, so they will still refer me back as Aisha IDP, and I derive pleasure in this.
Oh, that's lovely. I think it's really, I was going to stop you, but it will not be okay for you to not land. That's why I let you land on yourself before Zekaways. What first pulled you into gender rights work?
Yeah, so many things comes into play. Of course, when in northern Nigeria, particularly places like Borno State, women and girls are finding it's a highly patriarchal settle where women and girls basically doesn't even have a say in most cases, both at the household level and at the community level. So for a person to even say that they will have an opinion upon certain topics or initiative that has to do with their life and relationship within the community, it sounds like a taboo subject because we are naturally conservative. These are how we've been. These are the kind of cultures that we're known for.
Culture and some link it to religion.
And then some link it to religion, and then you will see that a lot of issues have been happening, and you cannot be able to have an opinion about some of these things, and then I find it unacceptable.
That was why.
Yeah,
that
was why. And then some of these things, some people will say that it's NGOs that go to Borno and then they started teaching us about gender. These are some of the
stereotypes.
Yeah, stereotypes. But to be honest, for me, speaking up and then speaking for my rights started
before NGOs.
Back then in the primary school, because I was doing well with my friends. I have both the boys and the girls as my friends in the classroom, and then one day like that, one of our teachers walked into the class, and then the selection criteria for who becomes monitor then is just they will just recognize who are doing well. Who are these students that are doing well in the class, and then they will bring you out to the podium, and then they will ask the audience, who do you want as your monitor? So when they ask the class, including the men, over 80% want me as their monitor. And then the other option is a boy. He was Alhaji Ali, one of my very good primary school mates. And then the teacher be like, no, Aisha is a girl, that she cannot be your monitor. That's how I spent my life being an assistant in my primary school at the early age. But one of the key things that I did is I was a good mobilizer, even back then. I make it very difficult for this guy to feel like he's a monitor. Of course, in the title, he was the monitor, but I find my way to always control the class, and I have the backing of both his friends and my friends in the class. So these are some of the key things that we grow up with, and then we grow up angry.
So it influenced your decision
yes, it influenced my decision
space.
To advocate for girls' rights and their voices and leadership.
That's really amazing to say that from primary school you've experienced what it is to differentiate you from your male counterparts and be able to stand up for yourself, find an alternative way to walk through this path is really interesting. And I think we'll explore that later on. So in this work, it's always demanding. What are the things that this work is costing you personally in your life?
Honestly, this work costs a lot. I always tell young people, especially young girls that look up to us, that it's good to be ambitious, but you know that there is a cost for that. And one of the key things is that I can just simply cite an example. I always tell you that I'm tired of the work I'm doing, and especially last year. Last year, throughout the whole year, I couldn't spend 100 days in Maiduguri. I'm either in Abuja, I'm either in Plateau, I'm either in, you understand, Anambra, Bayelsa. So I have been going around supporting different responses and the rest. Sometimes it could be related to Zekaways, sometimes it's consultancy, sometimes it's just you being invited to speak to young girls by initiatives that felt that you are a young person and these are your generation. It will be better if you come and speak to these young girls than the EDs that are 50 or 60 running their organizations. So I spent less than 100 days in Maiduguri. That's supposed to be my home base.
And that's one of the challenges.
That's one of the challenges. Time. I was not able to get more time to spend with my kids. Yes, and that sometimes make me feel guilty. I am like, I'm not doing well. At the end of the day, when I was to travel to spend some days outside
Maiduguri.
Outside Maiduguri. In fact, it was on a lesser Hajj. I have no choices. People will be like, why are they taking these younger children to Saudi and the call? But at that time, when I did the calculation, that 2 weeks in December was the only period that I have within that whole year for me to be able to spend quality time with this kid. And then I wanted to go out to spend that time elsewhere. So the decision was just overnight. I just said I was not fair, because when you lay down and then you're just reflecting on your whole day, you will feel guilty, because these children didn't ask you to bring them to this world. You decided to have them, and I felt they should have responsibilities. Yes, they should have some certain level of my attention. So these are some of the challenges now, that comes. And then another important thing is that you don't even get time to spend with your childhood friends alone. This work has cost me a lot of relationship. I am not able to keep in touch with people with whom I share my childhood with, and that to some certain extent, some of them feel angry. Yes, at the course of this work, honestly, I lose so many friends, and I'm truly sad that I lose some of them. I think for anybody ambitious,
you must try to compartmentalize your friendships. For people that would understand, it's okay. For people that wouldn't understand, if you try to make them understand and they are not, you need to move forward. That's what life teaches us every day. So what keeps you from giving up, in a nutshell?
What keeps me going is the impacts we're able to make on the lives of children. And women and girls. There are instances, there are so many stories when I visit field, whenever I was in a monitoring visit to a communities, and I get to interact with the girls that we served or their parents, and they were able to tell me how some of the interventions we have done have improved their life, or how some of these things that we don't even, sometimes you'll just do it as a kind of, as a way of kindness and move on, but you may not know the kind of impact it will have on people's life. One of the key things that I drive pleasure in this work that we do is getting to interact with some of these adolescent girls that may be at a risk of dropping out of school, and because you were able to interact with their parents, or because you were able to put them into a peer group, they were able to you provided them with a support system to share their stories, to support each other, and keep encouraging each other to move on in the community. So some of these things that we do is actually not easy, but by the time you visit community and then you get to hear firsthand the impact the work you're doing is making on the life of people, then that alone keeps me going.
That's really amazing. You know, you're a communicator, and I see that you like to explain a lot, but check our time so that we'll be able to cover a lot.
All right.
What would you call yourself? An advocate, a humanitarian worker, or a disruptor?
I am a humanitarian worker and advocate. But if I am to choose one, I can say that I'm an advocate.
Okay, I think for me, maybe from the conversation, I would say you're a disruptor. That's what I would think. Thank you. And with this, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, the conversation continues, and we'll be touch bearing on what Zekawiz does on a daily and the impact they're making in the community. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's still Spotlight on, only on S24 television. And we've been speaking to Aisha Takabu, the ED and founder of Zekawiz. We've touched bare on where she started before Zekawiz, and there's been a lot of story, very interesting ones. And let's take it off from there. Aisha, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
Specifically, what problem was Zekawiz created to solve?
Okay, advancing the rights of women and girls, ensuring economic participation, addressing the critical menstrual hygiene needs of girls, especially of school age. So basically, we can be able to say that we're out there to ensure that women and girls' rights are observed, protected and supported to fulfill their full potential.
So why focus on women, girls, and vulnerable communities?
So when you focus, for me, when you focus on women, girls, and children, by extension, you have served the entire community, because of course some people will say, why not a man? But it's not as if we don't serve men. Indirect beneficiaries of our intervention also includes men and boys. And let me be frank, for most of the programs we have implemented that we see it work in the community are programs that recognizes men and allies. So we may be zenith of the girl, child, and women initiative support, but that doesn't mean that we don't serve
the
men
boys
and the boys. Because if we want to have a friendly environment for girls and you left out the boys without changing the mindset, you will going to create another problem in years to come, because you will end up having an empowered girls that knew about their rights, the need to have their voices, the need for representation in the community. But then girls doesn't have an isolated communities. They live with the men and boys. So we also engage the boys to understand that we share this world, and then it's very important for us to work in collaboration rather than in isolation. And that alone will going to make an informed generation of young leaders that respect each other, that values each other irrespective of their age, gender, or religion and ethnicity differences. So we served everybody. Of course, women and girls may be the primary interest, maybe because I'm a woman, and then maybe because I'm a young person, and then maybe it's because I'm someone that at a point in my life also see vulnerability, because you're just living and then terrorists come to take over your town and you have to be displaced at a point. So we understand that as such kind of, at that moment of transition, is a forced displacement. So women and girls are associated with a lot of risks. At that time, they could be raped by the terrorists themselves. They could be raped by even people that are supposed to be on a peacekeeping mission. They could be raped by even the humanitarian aid workers that are supposed to save them.
Or even their internally displaced persons that are in the same place.
So these are some of the key reasons. Because of the vulnerability that is associated with women and girls in conflict. That's why. But otherwise, we save men and boys because we share this world.
That's amazing. Your work cuts across protection, education, nutrition, gender equality, social cohesion, women's participation and economic resilience. Is that broad, or is that simply the reality of women's lives?
Yeah, most of these things are interlinked and are interconnected. Because when we say women and girls, social cohesion, economic empowerment, nutrition, and the rest, you could see that in a conflict-affected setting, there is that need for support system that should exist between most of these people. Some of these women have never left their communities to even their state capital or even their local government headquarters. There are women that lived their life all throughout. They are either in their community or the neighboring communities without even minding to visit their local government headquarters. And then at a point they are displaced, and maybe when they are displaced, the kind of IDP setting that they are being put, maybe they were no longer with their neighbors and the previous people that they used to live together in. So the need for us to put them together and then build that social cohesion for them to be able to interact as part of their healing process was very important for us. And then about empowerment, of course, whether in IDP settings or not, women and girls deserve the rights and access to information about their sexual and reproductive health. They should be able to make an informed choices and informed decisions about their life, the number of children they want to have, the kind of family setting they want to have. That's one. And then on the nutritional basis, we know that in conflict settings, so many things comes into play. So conflict doesn't stop pregnancy, conflict doesn't stop childbirth, because they still stay with their families. So there is need for us to also incorporate the need for nutrition for both pregnant and lactating women. And then we know that by just using some of their backyards in their homes, they can be able to engage in so many things that will enable them to like kind of address their nutritional needs. You may go to the community with a flip chart showing maybe a graphic design of a woman that may not look like the ordinary woman in the community, but we should be able to educate them to understand that they can actually meet their nutritional needs based on this locally available food in their environment, teaching them the 4-star diet, what makes up the 4-star diet and everything. At some point, we even go to the extent of cooking demonstration in the community just to put into practice. We practicalize some of these things we told them in the theories. So, and then for me, when it comes to the issues around empowerment, empowerment must not necessarily involve finance, but the best form of protection you could ever give a woman is economic empowerment and financial independence.
Thank you. So what makes Zekawis different from other NGOs?
Yeah, for us, Zekawis, we are very strategic about the kind of donors we chase. We don't chase every donor, and we cannot claim to say that we are doing everything. Most of the upcoming organizations, or most of local NGOs, you see them, today you go to GBB coordination meeting, they are here. You'll go to health coordination meeting, they are here. Mental health and psychosocial support coordination meeting, they are here. Livelihood. So we refuse to be master of all, jack of all trades. In the beginning. So in the beginning, we already specify from the name, you know who we are out to support. Yeah, and then who we are out to support. And then maybe when we go into details, we then tell you by extension, even the people that you think we're not serving, we're serving. But what makes us stand out is the fact that from day one, we didn't shift from our vision, regardless of the stigma, regardless of the name colors that may come with the work that we do. We stick to our conviction. And then we said we're women and youth-led organization. If you will go to Zekawis, more than 75% of our personnel are young people. More than 50% out of this are young people below the age of 30. So these are some of the key things that make us stand out. So when we said we're women and youth-led organization, we truly mean it.
That's amazing. So now let's talk about the most difficult part of running a women-led NGO in Northeast. What has it been like for you?
Yeah, the difficulty is there. I always tell my colleagues that, well, while being a women-led organization will comes with some advantage when it comes to donors and the international community that already felt like women there are marginalized. They sort of see us as a marginalized group because we're not in the decision-making tables. For instance, we have 27 LGS in Borno. We have 28 members House of Assembly. You don't see a single woman. So for any person, an outsider, that is coming to that city, they already knew that women are truly struggling. So that is the other part of it. So it gives you some certain level of advantage when you're competing for grant. But then another thing is that most of this grant bargaining and conversation doesn't just happen in the official lies that we're seeing. It may happen officially, maybe in the outside world, the grant that you'll just see online and then apply. That one doesn't require any lobbying and everything, but most of the conversation around bargaining for grants, around lobbying, doesn't happen in an official setting like that. Okay, as a Muslim woman, for that matter, from the northern Nigeria, I cannot be able to, for instance, say that I will hang out with most of the people that make this decision at maybe club. Maybe that is where they go out to hang out, to like kind of discuss some of these things behind the doors before it even comes out. So I will always tell my colleague in the office that, well, we will only do our best, but the men will always have advantage over us. Some of this meeting can be organized that, okay, let's hang out at NAF by 8 p.m.
Time.
Even in a daylight, you will not see me as a northern Muslim going to NAF. You understand? Talk less of them at 8 p.m. So these are some of the places where the negotiations and the bargaining happen. And as a Muslim woman, you don't expect to see me there in places like that. So because of that, you will see that most of the funding for Zekawis, of course, we have been working for long, but our funding base are actually most times not the organizations that have presence in Borno.
Wow.
For instance, the IPOS we have been implementing for, they are one of our major sort of supporters for the last, I think since 2022, I have been implementing for IPOS, from disseminating the Vavlo skeleton intervention to this moment we're talking about. IPOS has been one of our very good partner. They don't even have presence, they don't have office in Borno, they work through us. So you see, but for most of these organizations that have presence in Borno State, the conversation, if it is official, we'll go there, show our face, tells you what we're doing.
The unofficial
but anything
one?
Unofficial, we may not be at the table. And then most of this grand conversation happens
on unofficial
ground. That's just the truth.
This is really eye-opening for us. Now let's go to your 2025 report, which says Zekawis reached 110,709 people directly. That's a very great number.
Yeah.
What does that number represent in real life?
Okay, behind every number that you have seen is a story of a woman struggling to access the basic health care for her child. It's a story of a girl that is at risk of dropping out because of something as simple as menstrual hygiene product. So, and then we have reached 100 and plus last year because of something that just started online. I was just in a LinkedIn, and then I saw a message. I saw one very private a company that called Dimagi. They own Comcare for people that are used to Comcare, and then they are calling for expression of interest from organizations that are from northern Nigeria. I just feel it throughout the application process of Demagi. There was no point where I even touched my laptop. Anytime they get back to me after 2 weeks to say that you are qualified for the next step, the process, it was so simplified that you don't even get to say, let me get my laptop to work. It's just my phone all the time, filling all the informations. And at the beginning, what they did was actually, because they were just communicating with us online, just feeding them up with information. So they just say that at a point they come down to Nigeria and they pull out, I think, so many of us, different organizations, 2 of us from Borno. There is one from Yobe, and of course others from Zamfara and Katsina, the Sokoto, yeah, and etc. We came together and then they call it trial run. They said we should go and reach out to 3,000 children. They supplied us with the vitamin A supplement and then ORS and zinc, Copac. So part of it will also do MWAC screening to refer children that are at risk of malnutrition. And then we did the trial run, and within just 2 months, we were able to reach the 3,000. So then they come back when we are proceeding to the scale-up implementation, they give us 50,000 children. They said we should reach to 50,000 children. We coordinated with the State Primary Healthcare Development Board. They have been very supportive because throughout the intervention, it is government health facilities we're using across all the local government to keep our drugs safe without any danger and without having a second thought that what will happen to some of these items. Yeah, so we have worked closely with the Borno State Primary Healthcare Development Board. Both their directors and their ES have been so helpful in the process. So we reached the 50,000 children. And then somewhere in September, we're here in Abuja when they reached out to say that, hi, Zekawis, we're thinking of adding additional 30,000 children, but we want it run at max 15 November. We say, yes, we can be able to do it, but behind the scene, we're like, how can we do that? We just make our calculation and then say that, okay, let's just increase the number of the frontline health workers because we work through frontline health workers. So actually, if we were to tell you the number of the people we have reached is actually more than the 80,000 that was reported in the in our annual reports. But why we could not be able to capture more than the 80,000, I can tell you why. This intervention is something that the donors and everybody with access to the platform can view at the service delivery point.
Portal.
Yeah, portal, because you are delivering the service and it's kind of a life. They are seeing it. So, and you also have to like kind of take the pictures of these children when you are administering the vitamin A, and then when you are doing the MWAC screening, you have to upload it in the ComCare.
Individually.
Yes, it's a real-time data, yeah. So at the end of the day, they have their criteria. It is automatic. So when you deliver this child and you move on, it will go a certain level of screening by their system for your service to be approved. If they found anything or any mistake, maybe you didn't even take the picture of the MWAC screening that you have done proper, they will not record it. So in real life, we have actually delivered these services to more than 90,000 children. But it is only the verified and the approved one
that made it to your data.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was going to ask that you mentioned in your report that you reached 4.5 million people indirectly. What was your metric of gathering such information? But you've answered briefly from your previous response. So let's move on due to time. You managed over 280 million naira in programs fund. What did that money change?
Yeah, this money changed a lot of lives. It created a lot of jobs. Like we said, these 80,000 children that we delivered child health campaign for within the span of 6 months, behind these numbers are jobs that are created for frontline health workers. Some of them are just coming out from their College of Health, some of them with no access to 100 pound. But then part of our intervention, we were able to also have 100 pound provided for every frontline health workers. So behind these numbers, we created jobs. We have seen impacts where a situation whereby we have gone to deliver a child health campaign in a household that may not have been able to reach a healthcare facility to access these services, because this vitamin A supplement, for instance, the campaign is only run twice in a year in Borno State, and this twice in a year, they come to the primary healthcare facility to assess it during the Child Health Week. So every year we run it 2 times. So and not every woman that is living in a remote area will have the transportation cost to come to the primary healthcare facility to access services. In this case, we took these services to their doorstep, to their household. And because of that, we didn't miss any child. If we said, for instance, we have delivered a child health campaign in 2 political wards of a community, I will give you the possibility that 99.9% of the children that are in that community were able to access that services. Yeah, because it's not something one-off. You go today, you deliver the services, you record their information and everything on the ComCare Connect.
And then go back?
And go, when you proceed, even if the child wasn't there when you go, it is a kind of 6-month period. And because of the intensive, it's not money, but because of the ORS and the zinc that you give it out in the community.
Basic medication.
Yes, the parents will always willing to come to you and then ask for it. And ask for their child that may not be able to get maybe when you visited their household in the past.
That's really amazing. I think this report is really robust. We'll come to it briefly before we call it a wrap. Let's take another short break. We've been speaking about impact reports from Zekawiz in 2025, and we will definitely touch base on the impact of these numbers on the people when we return. Stay with us. Again, we'll be right back. Welcome back again. It's still Spotlight on, only on S24 television. And it's been a very amazing conversation with Aisha Takabo, the ED and also the founder of ZECAWIS, Zenith of the Child. And we've spoken about reports. Just briefly, I believe we'll be able to churn out an article that would speak to details in this report, which is the annual 2025 report of ZECAWIS. Now, let's talk about the numbers again. You've mentioned a lot of things that are interesting, and as a person, I want to be able to feel what you feel in the community when you do these things. In your report, again, 2025 report, what makes you really the proudest ED ever?
Of course, the ZECAWIS has been in existence since 2018.
Yes,
but
7 years, about 8 years.
7 years. By October, we should be 8 years. But the number of jobs we created last year, because the economy in the country, the period is hard time for everyone because of the subsidy removal and everything. And then young people are struggling to get jobs. Part of the key things that makes me proud last year was the number of jobs we were able to create, because only in only the Digital Health campaign, we work with over 80 frontline health workers. And 80 frontline workers, behind these 80 frontline workers are maybe young women with children that are looking up to them every morning. We have men that are providers that their entire family looks up to them in the morning. We also have young people that just left College of Health, proceeding to the university, struggling to get their school fees and then everything. But because this is a real-time data and then a milestone-based intervention, we were able to offer them with job, and they were able to do their registration. They can go in the morning to attend to their classes, and in the afternoon, they deliver the services. Another thing that maybe will interest you is that it is a year that we delivered based on milestone. Because for every payment that you get for the Digital Health campaign, it has to be verified that you deliver that intervention using their own standard and monitoring matrix before you will even be reimbursed as an organization. So 2025 is a year that we delivered based on milestone. Donors don't just wake up to give us their fund and say, go and do humanitarian intervention. No, we work with people that shows that they value their money, and for you to be able to get paid, you have to work. Truly work for the work that you are being assigned to.
Oh, that's really
and then additional thing is that, you know, in part of our impact story, our story of impact, if you go through it, there is one story that truly stands out. We have a story of a young girl in a community in Chibok that is, I think she has a form of disability. She's deaf, and then she gave birth 2 times out of rape. Nobody in the community, not her parent, not her peers, nobody knows who is actually doing this thing for her. And then somehow, the importance of peer learning, somehow, someone that came to Chibok town and participated in our peer-to-peer session, go back to the community, and then she was like, no, this is improper. By the time we met the lady, by the time we met the girl, she was already in her 3rd
trimester
pregnancy. No, the 2, she already gave birth to them, 3rd pregnancy. Just like a married woman, she kept giving birth, and then...
Who were taking care of the kids?
So she has her parents and the community and everything. So when we identified that, of course, communication with persons with disability has been difficult, but then with the help of her friends and her family members that has trained with her, a trained peer educator that we trained in the Chibok was able to communicate with this girl. She was able to refer to a partner that I think International Medical Corps, because they are providing comprehensive case management. So they were able to case manage this lady, and at the end of the day, she was referred to primary healthcare facilities to be able to get a proper mental health and psychosocial support. So we have supported this girl. She's disabled. If not because of this intervention, we may not know the number, how many times will she be constantly be raped and be giving birth to children that nobody knows who the father is. So now, and then secondly, in our child health campaign, we saw that we had been dealing with polio. And Nigeria at some point was declared as a polio-free
society or nation.
Or nation. Then during this our child health campaign, the importance of this surveillance and then house to house, taking the intervention into the doorstep. One of our frontline worker went to our house and then he met a woman with, I think, 12-month-old baby that cannot move his leg. And then he observed and he was like, the mother explained, he said, this is her third day. This is the child's third day. He was not able to move. And then the frontline worker be like, when does that start? She said 3 days ago. It means the child was healthy prior to the 3 days back. So because he was a trained health worker, I wasn't a health worker. I may not know if I were the one, but because he was a trained health worker, he was able to identify that something was wrong with this child. And then that immediate action that he took has saved the child. Otherwise, he would have become a disabled person, person in the processes. So we have so many impact stories, but the few I shared is one of them. So
very quickly, what does success look like when the crisis in the Northeast, especially Borno, has not ended yet? What does success look like for you?
Yeah, the success for me is the ability for the Borno's population to continue to be resilient and hopeful amidst all the crises and then challenges that they have faced in the past. And then success also means that young people like us that have lived in this conflict, that have experienced the displacement, sitting down in S24 today, sharing our story. Yeah. So these are some of the key things that...
So can peace building work without women, in your opinion?
Just like life, peace begins with women.
Okay, do local women-led organizations receive the trust they deserve, in your opinion?
Yeah, to be honest, the communities trust women-led organizations more than the men. So we enjoy that advantage. The community trusts us more than any outsider that is coming to say that they want to serve them.
With your numbers, especially your reports, what does empowerment look like inside one family you've worked with?
Empowerment means economic empowerment and financial independence for a woman. And then education for the girl child.
So what changes when women are part of decision-making?
When women are part of decision-making, we get an inclusive society. Let me re-emphasize that no society will ever make progress without the contribution of over 50% of its population. We are always told that women are more than men in numbers. So when we neglect women and undermine their role in community development, it means our communities will continue to remain underdeveloped.
Are donors actively listening to local-led organizations or grassroots actors like you?
Yeah. With the localization agenda, the localization is a global conversation. It's something that is already happening. It is more cheaper when they work with local organizations like us than funding INGOs and the United Nations entities. So donors are particularly picking interest in localization.
So what happens when funding ends, but community needs remain? Remember the USAID thing?
Yeah.
I'm sure some of your donors or your partners that you've worked with before.
In fact, we went through due diligence with USAID for one, resilient building and economic empowerment for women and youths. And then, unfortunately, this didn't happen. And we know how this affected us as actors in the field.
Wow. It is really eye-opening. I was going to reference maybe the USAID thing more because I'm sure you've worked with multiple organizations that benefit, or the 90% or more benefit from USAID funding and what it has been. So what is the impact of the fund cuts from USAID in reality with the kind of work that you do?
Honestly, I would like to cite an example. we have a very partner that is so strategic to us. Mexico, for instance. Mexico in Nigeria, they are the INGOs that are taking lead in market system development. And unfortunately, over 90% of their funds come from USAID. So when the funding cut-off happen, that automatically means that market system development intervention is cut off. And you can imagine the impact that will have in, on the people and the communities.
So I think because I've been reading a bit of the report, so it's really interesting to speak to you on this matter, because it means a lot to us as storytellers to also amplify some of the stories so that people understand from your perspective what you're doing, what it means for you to get funding. And I would like to ask you, from our conversation earlier, you mentioned something like, we go all out to look for this funding. What is it like asking donors for funding?
To be honest, to everybody viewing, it's not easy. It has never been easy. It will never be easy. But then you, when you meet your donors, just make sure that you are prepared. You just make sure that your interests and the interests of these donors align. You can't go to an organization that their interests are children, and you begin to talk about 59-year-old woman that you are trying to serve from protection. That may not be their interest. You need to speak to them in their own language, the language that will resonate with them, the language that will make them feel moved, for them to be able to support you. But like I said, resource mobilization is one of the key challenging issues in this work that we do, but we'll continue to push. And then one of the key interesting things with actually working with local actors, because I'm from Borno State, I'm rooted there. Whether or not they're responding or not, I'll continue to remain in Borno State because that's where
your base,
my base. So some of the key things, interesting things with funding locally led organization is the fact that if I'm running a safe space that is being funded by USAID. Because USAID has gone, that safe space is in my community. I will continue to run the safe space whether there is that funding or not. Unfortunately, most of the organizations that are running the safe spaces from that region were actually the INGOs and the UN entities. So by the time there is no fund, they disappear.
And leave.
We have seen a lot of women and girls-friendly safe spaces being closed down because of the U.S. funding cut-off. But if it is the ones that are being run by locally led organizations that are rooted from the community,
they will find alternative and diversify. And then lastly, on the main question, what would flexible funding change for Zekawis?
To be honest, flexible funding is one of the key things that will make organizations to implement the most innovative ideas that will save life, continue to advance the rights of women and girls as well as children. And that's why Malala Funds will always stand out. Malala Fund is so flexible that if you're implementing an education program and you see that in this community, maybe what you budgeted for is just you going to the community addressing menstrual hygiene needs, and then you realize that the number of the out-of-school girls in that community or entire children is in increase. You can't be able to just communicate with them that we need to do a community dialogue in this community, whether it will cost money or not, they will just give you the go-ahead to do that. So flexible funding allows you to implement both life-saving intervention and programs that will continue to improve the quality of life for the people. Because you designed program last year, maybe I designed my program in January 2023 or January 2024. By September, there was a flood. You understand? The non-flexible funding will not let you respond to that flood because what they have given you that funds for were not to respond to the flood. But flexible funding will allow you to use respond to the immediate needs of women and girls that
in
are
that
affected by the flood. So it means a lot when fundings are flexible. It allows organizations to implement the most innovative ideas.
Thank you. And now let's quickly move to rapid fire on Spotlight On. It's simple answer, short, yes or no, or you just give a very brief sentence. Let's start with this one. One word for Nigerian girl child. One word.
12 years of quality education.
One word for Nigerian girl child. Just one word. Maybe innovative, maybe just one word.
Resilience.
Resilient. One word for Nigerian woman.
Empowerment.
Empowerment. Ooh, that's amazing. Biggest barrier to girls' education. What's the biggest barrier to girls' education?
Access.
And biggest barrier to menstrual dignity.
Poverty.
Biggest myth about gender equality.
They are fighting men.
Fighting men, wow. Dialogue or confrontation?
Dialogue.
Policy or funding? Policy or funding? Choose
Policy.
one. Okay. Most ignored issues or issue affecting girls. What is the most ignored issue that you think is affecting girls?
Menstruation.
Most misunderstood issue affecting women.
Go back again.
Okay, most misunderstood issue affecting women.
Reproductive health.
Reproductive health. That's amazing. The North's biggest gender challenge, in your opinion, what's the North's biggest gender challenge?
Political participation.
Political participation. And what is your proudest Zekawis moment? Proudest? What is your most proudest Zekawis moment? What makes you the proudest person that founded Zekawis?
Our ability to grow to where we are within this short period of time.
Complete this. A girl is safe when
she's been enrolled to school, being returned to complete 12 years of quality education.
And complete this finally. A woman is empowered when
she's economically empowered and financially independent.
Thank you so much, Aisha, too. This has been an eye-opening conversation for me. Tonight's conversation reminds us that gender rights are not abstract. They are classrooms, health centers, safe spaces, sanitary pads, informed choices, women speaking without fear, girls staying in school, survivors being believed, communities choosing dignity over silence. Aisha Kabu's walk through Zekawis shows what local leadership can do when courage meets evidence and service meets community. But civil society cannot carry this burden alone. Government, donors, schools, religious leaders, traditional institutions, families, and the media must all decide whether women and girls will remain footnotes in development or become central to peace, justice, and progress. This has been Spotlight On, only on S24 television.